what is going on? Why are you charging all these things to my credit card? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. My husband, Jack, replied with a cold satisfaction. This is punishment for all the disrespect you've shown me lately. You'll pay for going against me. I felt rage rise within me as I realized he was trying to control me using my own money. Forget you, Jack, I snapped back. What Jack didn't know was that when he came home, he would be met with a surprise that would change everything. I'm Emma, 37 years old. A few years ago, my life turned upside down when I found out I was pregnant. What should have been a happy time, full of excitement and joy, became a period of stress and worry because of my husband Jack's emotional abuse. The man I thought would be my support seemed more focused on his job than our growing family. Ironically, Jack worked as the CEO of a well-known family counseling center, promoting family values and support. It was hard to watch him ignore his own family while he preached about how important family was. His obsession with his job meant he ignored my emotional needs and well-being. The stress from his behavior affected me physically, causing complications during my pregnancy and early labor. In that terrifying moment, I needed his support more than ever, but he stayed distant, too focused on his career. I kept hoping the birth of our son would bring us closer, but Jack remained the same, only caring about his work. I felt like I was drowning in loneliness, longing for a partner to help with the joys and struggles of parenthood. Instead, I was left to handle everything on my own, long nights, constant worry, and endless responsibilities. When I asked Jack for help, he yelled at me, threatening to make my life even worse if I kept bothering him about things he thought were trivial. Do you care more about your career than about our relationship? I asked him one day, desperation in my voice. He responded coldly, my job makes me feel successful. Unlike you, it doesn't bother me with pointless worries. Do you think caring for our son isn't important? I asked, hurt and frustrated. Stop talking to me like that, he snapped. I've already told you I'm busy. Leave my office. Taking care of our son, Max, by myself was hard. He deserved his father's attention, but Jack refused to be involved. I have more important things to do than babysit. I need to focus on my job. Emma, Jack said. How can you give so much to a company that says family is important, but neglect your own family? I asked, resentment clear in my voice. Don't question me, Emma, you'll regret it, Jack warned angrily. Jack, do your worst. I'm done with you. Maybe I should divorce you and show everyone that your so-called family values are a joke, I shot back. Jack hated when I talked about divorce because it hurt his reputation. This made him even more angry and led to more emotional abuse. Months passed, and Max grew up without much involvement from Jack. His absence was obvious, but I was determined to create a loving home for Max on my own. When Max's first birthday came around, Jack put on an act determined to find justice. I knew that the time had come to part ways with Logan, especially while he was still in Hawaii. Staying with him, after ignoring his calls during his trip, felt increasingly daunting. There was no turning back. I had to break free from him for good. With my focus on reclaiming my freedom, I began making arrangements to move myself and Roy in with a trusted friend. Logan's trip to Hawaii became the catalyst for my escape, and his attempts to manipulate me only strengthened my resolve. This was it. I was preparing to leave behind the pain and chaos he had caused. 12 days had passed since he left, and I felt proud of how far I'd come, securing a lawyer, starting to build my case, and finally distancing myself from the toxic environment. I had incredible support from friends and family, and their help was invaluable. As I finalized the move, Logan's brother reached out, clearly relaying Logan's frustration. He accused me of acting immaturely, suggesting that becoming a parent had affected my mental health. I took a deep breath, refusing to get drawn into his provocation. I'm not interested in discussing this, I said firmly. If that's all, then this conversation is over. After a brief pause, the phone was handed over to Logan. His voice was cold and hostile. Hello, Aspen, I'm done with your defiance. Do you really think you can just keep acting like this? He demanded. Why are you calling me? I don't want to talk to you, I responded, my patience thinning. Logan pressed on. Are you still acting like a child? Is being a parent messing with your head? What do you want? I asked, keeping my anger in check. I wanted to tell you that when I get back, I'll be throwing a celebration with the boys and some key people from the company. You can prepare the meals and dress appropriately. We'll be home early, so everything should be ready by then, he said, expecting me to comply. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out. This was the man I had once loved, the one who had reduced me to nothing more than a servant in his eyes. The realization repulsed me. "Don't worry, Logan, I have something planned for you, and your brothers and colleagues will be shocked when they see it," I replied, holding back the storm of emotions inside. His voice softened, a smug smirk evident. "That's the spirit. We'll talk later. I'll send you a list of dietary restrictions." After he hung up, I left the divorce papers and my ring on the kitchen counter. I gathered my last belongings and bid farewell to a life that had haunted me for too long. When Logan returned from his trip just 24 hours later, he must have been stunned by what he found. The house was eerily quiet, with only the divorce papers and an unmistakable emptiness to greet him. I can only imagine the shock on his face as he realized the truth. I had left him for good. Though I didn't get to see his reaction in person, I savored the knowledge that his control over me had finally shattered. However, the phone calls soon came flooding in, from Logan and his brothers. I reluctantly answered one of his calls, only to hear his fury. "What's the meaning of this? You think you can just leave?" Logan raged. "I've got important people on my side, and they're just as confused as I am." I remained calm. "I'm divorcing you, Logan. Your web of lies has collapsed. You're lucky if you ever show your face here again." "What are you talking about?" he stammered, still grasping for control. "Check the news," I replied, sealing his fate. The local tabloid had already run a story, exposing Logan's lies and hypocrisy for all to see. The man who had pretended to be the perfect family man was now the subject of public ridicule. His fall from grace wasn't limited to his personal life, it rippled into his professional life as well. His bosses, once impressed by his charm and success, now saw him for what he was, an embarrassment. His career and reputation crumbled as his former colleagues distanced themselves from him. Meanwhile, I moved forward with the divorce, bolstered by a wealth of evidence and the unwavering support of my legal team. Logan's calls continued, full of desperate pleas and regret, but I refused to let his manipulation work on me anymore. "Aspen, please come back. I've made mistakes, and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this," he begged. "Logan, it's too late. Roy has shown me what real love and support look like. I deserve better than the toxic relationship you gave me," I replied firmly. His desperation only grew, but I remained resolute. The emotional scars he left behind were deep, but no apology could erase the damage. I had learned to value myself and my happiness, and that gave me the strength to continue forward. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew I had the strength to rebuild my life. Logan would face the consequences of his actions, and I would never let him have a place in my future again. I found some comfort knowing that things had ended without major problems. With a father like Jack, a decent party was the best we could expect. No matter how much he pretended, his true nature was impossible to hide. Despite his acting skills, the truth about Jack, full of lies and deceit, would eventually come to light. That truth came out after Max's birthday when Jack dropped a bombshell. One evening, he casually mentioned a trip to Hawaii, leaving me in shock. The weight of the situation hit me all at once. How could he think of leaving now, just when I had started working again and needed his help with Max? I decided to confront him about his priorities and lack of consideration. "Are you serious about this trip? Don't you realize how much you're ignoring me and our responsibilities with Max?" I asked, frustrated. Jack barely looked up from his phone and replied dismissively, "This trip is for me and my brother, not you. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Frustrated, I pushed back. "You haven't even thought about my role in this family trip. I still need help with Max. You can't just leave." Jack's gaze turned cold as he looked at me. "I'm going on this trip with or without your approval. Stop pestering me," he said sharply. His words cut deep, and I barely recognized the man standing in front of me. The man I once loved seemed like a stranger, only concerned with himself. I was overwhelmed as I tried to understand his indifference. How could he prioritize a vacation over our family? Why did we even have a child if this was how he intended to act? I couldn't stop the tears from falling as I realized the depth of his selfishness. "We agreed, Jack. We decided together to have a child," I said, desperation in my voice. Jack's tone turned icy. "I only had the baby to keep up appearances. If I knew you'd react like this, I never would have had him. It's a burden I regret every day." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man I married was no longer the person I had fallen in love with. I had married someone who cared more about his image than our family's happiness. Heartbroken, I cried, realizing I had been blind to who he really was. Jack's final words only made my despair worse. "When I get back, I expect a quiet and obedient wife. No more of this nonsense." That night, something inside me shifted. Despite the pain, I knew I had to protect myself and Max from this toxic person. I silently promised myself that I would break free and regain my independence. When Jack left for Hawaii, I hoped his absence would bring relief from his constant abuse, but soon, I found out it would continue in a different form. Hours after he left, I noticed unusual charges on my credit card. Panic gripped me as I realized Jack was using my card to pay for his extravagant vacation. I called him immediately, shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Why are you charging all this to my credit card, Jack?" I demanded. He responded with cruel satisfaction. "Consider this a punishment for all the complaints you've made. You'll pay for defying me." I was furious at his audacity. "Go to hell, Jack," I yelled. He fired back. "You think you're tough now? The only reason you're acting like this is because I'm not there to teach you a lesson. I'll max out your card, and you'll regret crossing me." Fed up with his abuse, I found a new fire inside me. I wouldn't let him control me anymore. "Go ahead, Jack, do your worst. I promise you, I will ruin your life just as you've ruined mine," I replied firmly. Determined, I ended the call and blocked him. I knew I had to start planning my escape. That day, I began the process of hiring a lawyer, recommended by a close friend, and started the divorce proceedings. Within a few days, I met with my lawyer, who advised me to gather evidence to strengthen my case. I searched through security footage, messages, and voicemails, documenting Jack's cruel behavior. I even contacted the media team who had worked at Max's birthday party, asking for photos and videos that showed how uncomfortable Max was around his father. The team was sympathetic and sent me everything I needed. With their help, I gathered enough proof to build my case. My friends, who had always told me to leave Jack, supported me through the process. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed to take action. I also kept track of the charges on my credit card as more evidence of Jack's manipulation. I chose not to cancel my credit card, confident I would recover the money, and more, through the divorce. I let him think he was hurting me, all while I planned to make sure he paid for his actions. A week passed, and I knew I had to act quickly. Jack would return soon. I wanted to surprise him with something when he got home. He tried to reach out to me, asking me to reconsider and unblock him, threatening what would happen if I didn't. He even emailed me, unaware that I was using everything he said as more evidence against him. Despite his efforts to reconnect, I remained firm.